Hey, what's going on? Today I just wanted to talk about some essential plugins that I think you should have. I think everybody should have these. They're really just kind of no-brainers, stuff that you absolutely need if you're going to be producing music. So I've assembled a list of 7 plugins that I think you should absolutely have if you're making music. And this is not to be confused with favorite plugins. This is going to be a separate topic for a separate video, and I actually have a collaborator planned for that one. So we're going to go over our favorite plugins in that one, but this is essential stuff. This is not my favorites. This is stuff you need. So some of these are kind of boring, but I think you should know about them anyway because I think they're absolutely necessary to have. But stay tuned for a favorite plugins video because that one is going to be exciting. That's all about plugins that make me excited to make music, stuff that inspires me, stuff that I get really just excited to use. But without further ado, here are some essential plugins that every music producer should have. Let's go. Alright, here we go. I'm gonna dive into a project where I've actually used all of the essential plugins on my list. It wasn't too hard to find a project where I used all of these plugins. I'm just gonna go through them one by one. You'll see how each one is extremely useful. And there are a couple that are gonna be categories and that I'm gonna just provide alternatives to because they're not super inexpensive, but I still do think that the specific ones that I'm listing are definitely nice to have. So first off on the list, and this is in no particular order, saturation knob. This is a plugin that I've actually gone over before in one of my free plugins videos, and if you haven't checked both of those out, I highly recommend doing so because there's literally no reason not to get those plugins. They're all free, they're all easy to get. Just to go over this again, it's literally just a knob that controls the saturation of whatever channel you're putting on. Specifically, it controls the gain, and then there's just like a set soft clipper at 0 dB. So you have the actual saturation knob itself, and then you also have the saturation type, so you can choose to keep it nice and neutral so it saturates all frequencies evenly. You can have it set to keep high frequencies, and you can have it set to keep low frequencies. I usually like to set it on neutral because then that's kind of more of a true soft clipper where it clips everything evenly. I find that when I'm using this, I'm often doing it so that I can control spikes in volume of something without putting a limiter on it and sounding really squashed. This does a really nice job of just evening things out really nicely, and that's one of the things that I really like to use it for. So I often use it on the master track as just kind of a soft clipper to make my mix a little louder without it limiting like crazy. And this is a really good way to do that. This is also a really good way to just crunchify anything. So I'll often use this on little like plucky synths to make it nice and crunchy and nice sounding, just to give it a little extra flavor. So on this track, I'm using it on the kick, so you can hear when the kick plays, it's a little limited, and you can actually see it working. It's got like a little indicator light that shows when it's saturating. So you can hear it's not doing a whole lot, but it's really just making the kick slam into the mix nicely. It can end up adding some really nice high frequency overtones that sound really good, especially on kick drums. It can really just add like a nice clickiness to a kick. So I really like using it on kick drums. I think it sounds really, really good on kick drums. And really on anything else. Anything you add saturation to will sound amazing. Especially saturation knob. It's so easy, so difficult to go wrong with this plugin. Next up, we have another personal favorite, Supermassive. And again, this is a free plugin that I've gone over in that free plugins video. This is my favorite reverb out of any that I have, and I have paid reverbs. I have Valhalla Vintage Verb, I have Lux Verb, I have Neo Verb, I have tons of reverbs, and this is still my favorite, a free plugin. Technically, it's not even really supposed to be a reverb specifically. It's more of a delay than a reverb. Most of the time when I'm using it, I use it as a reverb because the cool thing about this is it has a little modulation section that basically allows you to take the individual delays and modulate them to create a real washy, reverby kind of thing, and it's really good.
This honestly has all of the controls you need in a reverb. It has mix and width, it has delay, so that's basically the individual delay length. It has warp, which is an interesting control. I'm not entirely sure what that does yet. It has a feedback amount, so that's how many delays you want. It has a density. It has, like I said, the modulation section that takes it from a delay to a reverb, and then it has an EQ section so you can high pass or low pass or both, and that's really helpful for just taming the unwanted frequencies in a reverb. It makes it so that you don't always have to put on a send, although I will say this is great as both an insert reverb and a send reverb. So I'm using it on several tracks here. I'm going to show you with reverb and without reverb. This is the bells coming from the Hydrosynth. So that's with reverb, and let's hear it without. So you can just hear it's just very lush and bright and nice. And you can make it like that, you don't have to make it like that. And then I also put it on this mid bass here, so this is with reverb. So that just sounds really big and huge, and then this is without reverb. So obviously making a big old difference. And then this one is even more interesting because this is almost entirely reverb. So this is with reverb. Just has a great big tail, and every note is just kind of masked by the reverb. So it's almost like using the reverb as an effects processor rather than an effect. It's like you're hearing more reverb than the original signal. So then this is it without Valhalla Supermassive. So you can hear it's just very metallic and weird, and I didn't want it to sound like that. I wanted it to sound smooth and nice. So then adding in that reverb just gets very nice and smooth. And it doesn't just sound great on synthesizers, it also sounds good on drums. Like here it is, I'm gonna play the full drum pattern for you, but it's on the snare and you'll hear it. Just adds a really beautiful tail to the snare that just kind of prolongs it, makes it sound huge. So overall, a great reverb, and my favorite, and there's no reason not to get this reverb. Next up, something that I put on literally every single project is Ozone. And I'm not gonna say you specifically need Ozone Advanced or Elements. Here I have Ozone 9 Elements. This was back when I only had Elements, so I actually have Advanced now, but I still have this Elements plugin on the master track. And basically what I use this for is I use it sometimes as an EQ, although there's another plugin that I like to use as an EQ more than this because it's a little more versatile, and we will go over that one in a bit because that's also on this list. And then I use the Imager as well. What's cool about the Imager is it also comes as a standalone plugin, and that's really good for putting on individual tracks. But what I use the most is the Maximizer. So it boosts the level a little bit, and then it also limits the level. You don't get any clipping in the master, but you're also not just like absolutely slamming it. It really just kind of takes control of the dynamics, makes it feel really natural, and it's a much better alternative than just slapping a limiter on your master track. So I use this all the time, and what's cool is if you get the advanced version, then you can use multiple different sections here as opposed to just the 3 that you get with the Elements version. You have all of these different effects that you can apply. My favorites are probably the Master Rebalance, the Low End Focus, Imager, the Exciter, and the Maximizer. Those are the ones I use the most, although all of them are honestly great. And the good thing about this is, as opposed to the Elements version where you only have the 3 different effects and they're in a set order, you can rearrange these so you can put them in whatever order you need them to be in for it to make sense with your mix. I do realize that Ozone 10 exists, but I have not upgraded because I don't feel it's necessary for the stuff that I do. That's definitely not the case for everybody, but I am perfectly content with Ozone 9 Advanced for all of my purposes. Alright, next up is Sandman Pro. I was actually going to put on this list, instead of Sandman, its little brother, Instant Delay, because I felt like I didn't want to include too high-end of plugins on this just in case they weren't available to everybody. But honestly, this plugin isn't that expensive in the first place, and having this, you will never need another delay plugin ever again. This does everything you could possibly want a delay plugin to do. You can get everything from the really typical ping pong delays that are good on synthesizers, all the way to weird, glitchy, time shift, reverse, weird stuff. So you have an input gain, you have pan control, you have a sample rate, which is cool for making real lo-fi sounding stuff. You have your delay time. What's cool is you have linked left and right, you have offset, and then you have independent left and right controls. So you can sync or unsync from the tempo. You can lock the time. You have a sleep buffer, which I've not even tried to understand yet. You have several different delay modes, which is cool. You have saturation, you have wow, and you have slew. And then as for the actual echo controls, you have feedback, crossfeed, and diffusion. And then just like on most delays, you have a low pass and a high pass, which is really cool for, again, just controlling unwanted frequencies. You have an output gain, you have an optional soft clipping mode, which is awesome. You have a mix control, you have mid-side mode, and then you also have a width control. And then you have all of these modulation controls down here, which you can assign to different things within the plugin, which is really cool for making weird sounding stuff, especially if you assign it to time, then you get all the weird pitch shifty, warbly things. Overall, there's nothing you can't do with this delay, so I feel like everybody should have this so that you never are wanting any more from a delay plugin. Next up is probably a fairly obvious plugin, but it's Fabfilter Pro-Q 3. Now I know there are other EQ plugins out there, and I know there are pretty good stock EQ plugins like FL Studio has Parametric EQ 2, which is really good, tons of bands. You have controls for the type of the band, you have like an order, you have like key controls, which is really cool because you can set it to a specific note. And then you also have resonance controls, and you can obviously, you know, move them around and stuff. It's cool. It's a really good thing. But I think for me, for Pro-Q 3, there are two things that really make this plugin for me. And the first one is the EQ matching, and why that's cool is because I like doing a lot of stuff with guitars. That means sometimes my amp doesn't sound exactly like I want it to. Sometimes I have another guitar track where I'm like, man, I really like how that sounds, but it's from a different amp. So what's cool is you can EQ match from a different amp and cabinet and get a very, very similar tone from a completely different cabinet. It feels like magic, but really it's just incredibly precise EQ matching where it analyzes the incoming frequencies and then applies whatever settings necessary to the new signal to make it sound like the old signal. It's really cool. And then the second one is definitely more important than that because I use it significantly more, and that is the workflow. Now let me show you what I mean. I'm just gonna load up a new instance of Pro-Q 3 here. The quickness of being able to work with this. This EQ comes with no bands stock. All you have to do to create one is do that. Just click and drag, anywhere. You can make it anywhere. Scroll wheel, it changes the Q factor. Beautiful. You can also change the slope of the EQ here all the way from 12 to 96 on a bell curve. You can change the type, so you have pretty much every type of EQ curve here. You can make it stereo, or you can split it into the left, the right, the mid, or the side channels, which is awesome. But my favorite thing, and this is the most useful thing, I use this basically as a filter. Haha, Fabfilter, you know? This is an extremely good way of getting a filter onto any track, because let me show you how quickly I can make a filter here, right? Load it up, stock, double click, on the end, boom, filter. How quick was that? And then scroll wheel, you change the slope of the filter so you can make it a brick wall. It's freaking awesome. And so that works on both sides. You can do it anywhere down here, double click, and you get a filter. That's a low cut, and then you can double click anywhere up here and you get a high cut. Isn't that dope? It's so good. It's so easy to use, and like I said, the workflow is just instantaneous. Like, it is more instantaneous than any other EQ I've ever used, and for something as boring as an EQ that you're gonna be putting like 5 of on every track, you need it to be quick to work with. And that's why I think this plugin is absolutely worth it. It's expensive, but it's totally worth it. One of the best investments I've ever made. Next up, we have Serum. I don't know.
Bruh.
I feel like everybody's gonna bag on me for recommending Serum because it's such the, basic EDM producer choice.
This is a cardinal sin of EDM right here.
You're a fucking comedian. Oh, this is actually an ad. Oh my god. Oh, Jesus. Fucking wrecked. Stop laughing. It's not funny.
But dude, it's so good. It's so quick. And this is going to be for pretty much the same reason as Fabfilter, just because of the workflow. For me, I know not for everybody. Other people have different synthesizers that they're used to working with, so maybe the workflow in theirs is better. And that's why I'm kind of just going to recommend this as a categorical plugin. Really, I'm recommending Serum because it's really good and it has a lot of features, but more than that, I'm recommending any synth that you know the workflow of and you can get any sound you want pretty much instantaneously with. Like for me, I can load up Serum and, within 2 minutes I can have exactly the sound that I want. And that's the best part about it, is that it's versatile enough that you can make anything you want in it, and the workflow you are used to enough, it fits your workflow enough that you can make things really, really just lightning fast with it. There are a lot of alternatives to this. There's some that are built into FL Studio. If you want a free alternative, Vital is a really good one. This one, in my opinion, even has more features than Serum. But this one, for me, I'm just not used to the workflow enough to be able to use it that quickly. I'm sure if I used it more, I could get used to the workflow, but I can recommend this as something where I can see the workflow being quick enough and easy enough, and it has definitely enough features that I could easily recommend this as a bang it out synth. Your workflow synth, the thing that you need to have in your arsenal. And there are others. There's, Pigments, there's Massive, there's Sylenth, there are tons of different ones, but it just really depends on what fits your workflow and what has all the features that you need to get working really quickly. And for me, that's Serum. So I have no problem recommending it, especially since now through places like Splice, there are rent-to-own plans, so you don't have to pay completely upfront for it, which is awesome. I just talked about how amazing this synth is, and then I'm gonna show you how literally I just used it as a noise riser in this. It's completely boring, but I mean, it does the job, right? Like, I didn't want to go just like pick a random sample of a noise riser. I was too lazy to go find one. So I just made a preset that I use for like most songs that's just white noise through a filter. I could just modulate the cutoff to an automation clip, and I have an instant white noise riser. It's perfect. Again, just workflow deal. Like, it is so easy and quick to use. And then the last plugin that I wanted to go over is OTT, of course. Fun fact, it's actually made by the same dude who made Serum, Steve Duda, and it's awesome. So this is a multi-band compressor. It is extremely tiny and extremely simple. Basically, you have a depth control, so that's pretty much just a mix. You have a time control, so that's the attack and decay time kind of lumped into one. You have an input gain, an output gain, upwards compression, downwards compression amount, and then you have the gain controls for each band, and then you also have the threshold controls for each band. I like to use this really in two applications. First thing, I slap it first insert on my master every single time. It just kind of glues stuff together. It's a really good plugin for gluing stuff. I usually have the mix pretty low, usually between 15 and 25%, just because if you go too crazy with it, it can really sound bad. Slapping it first insert on your master, 15 to 25% mix, you really can't go wrong. It just glues stuff together so nicely, makes stuff sound more cohesive. And then the second application I like to use this for is on plucks, usually with the mix a little higher, and it really just makes stuff sound nice and punchy. And why I like that on plucks is because plucks have a really short decay time and a really quick attack time. Using this on those and then putting a reverb on top of it, it just makes it sound really like in your face, punchy, really nice.
Alright, hope you found that helpful. I really had a fun time showing you the plugins that I think everybody should have. I hope this was helpful to you in deciding what you need to get first, you know, setting some priorities if you're just starting out, because that's really just what I'm trying to do. I'm really just trying to help out, you know, new producers, maybe some producers who have even been in it for a little while and are just looking for like that plugin that does exactly what they need to do. So hopefully at least one of these was that for you. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a comment down below and let me know, because I really enjoy seeing your guys' comments saying like, you know, you helped me out, like thanks for the help. I really enjoy seeing that because that's what I'm here for. So yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, stay safe. I'll see ya. Peace.